Welcome to the Choose Love Book Club. We have such a special guest, obviously, tonight, Dr. Chris Kukk. So excited to have him here. He is the Dean of the Cormier Honors College for Citizen Scholars and Professor of Political Science at Longwood University in Virginia. He's also the HarperCollins author, as we know, that's why we're here to celebrate, of the book, The Compassionate Achiever. He's a Fulbright scholar and member of Phi Beta Kappa, and he's a dear friend. Just a little bit of background on how Chris and I connected following Jesse's murder. Of course, I found that message, Nurturing Healing Love, on our kitchen chalkboard. And at the time, we had a trauma therapist that was assigned to our family by the state. And I knew that I had to get that message into classrooms, that was my purpose now in life. And she said, well, I think that you should talk to Dr. Chris Kukk. He's the dean, he's the dean of the honors program, and also the director of the Compassion, Creativity, and Innovation Center at Western Connecticut State University. So I called Chris and I went in to meet him, and the rest is history. He introduced me to, I sat down next to him and I said, or across from him, and I said, I need to get this message into schools. And he said, it's called social and emotional learning. And we literally made a pact right then and there that we would work together. We would create a program that would be implemented all across the country and world, and that we would work together for as long as it would take for our kindergartners to graduate 12th grade, and we would be sitting at their graduation. So we are doing this. We are 8 years in now. And now the program that we created is in over 10,000 schools in 112 countries. So it is happening. And you've been such a huge inspiration for me, Chris. You've been present throughout this entire journey. You wrote the neuroscience for the program. We've learned so much, so many late night calls while we were doing the curriculum writing with you that were life-changing for all of us. And I'm just so appreciative for you. I want to welcome you to the Choose Love Book Club.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
And I'll let Alexis also has a special relationship. I wouldn't have Alexis if it wasn't for you too. Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Alexis.
Oh, yeah, that's great.
Hi, everyone. Yes, it's so amazing. I just actually was recounting the story with one of our ambassadors the other night, and it was so great. Sorry, that's my dog barking in the background. He's like, where's the rest of my dinner, guys? Give me attention. But yeah, so I actually had the pleasure working for Dr. Kukk as one of his honors assistants when I was at WestCon for the Trolley Honors College. And actually I started working for him in 2012 prior to the tragedy. And that already Dr. Kukk was working on compassion, and we had His Holiness Dalai Lama visit our school. And then this horrible tragedy happened a few towns over. And I actually remember when Scarlett was coming to speak with Dr. Kukk, and we were wow, we can't believe it. A mother who went through this horrible thing is now coming and working with our professor. We were just so blown away. And then a few years after that, when I was graduating, I was one of the recipients of the Jessie Lewis Compassion Award. And there I met Scarlett and her mom and JT and Bob, and who would know, and I would never think in a million years that then a few short years later, I would start working for Choose Love. And it was definitely a Jessie moment, as Dr. Kukk recommended me to work for Choose Love, and so did her mom, who remembered me. Separately, they both.
Alexis, on the same day, I think we both called. Chris called and I called, and I said, I found Alexis' phone number on a little piece of paper today.
And she kept nudging me about it. You need to call this woman Alexis. She does fashion shows, but I think she should also work for Choose Love. Yeah. And I'm like, I will, Mom. I'm just so busy.
Yeah, she and her mom have done fashion shows. You told me that the night I met you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, it was always about charities and giving back. And then, I'm so lucky to now be helping to lead Choose Love. And, I really thankful, obviously, to Jesse, who brought us all together, and Dr. Kukk, who, encouraged me to, work for Choose Love. And it's been great. And of course, being a part of this book, I said, when I was promoting this to the team the other day, I was like, the best part of the book is that my name is in it. Obviously Dr. Kukk wrote, and also I was also mentioned as the honors 400 class. The year that you were writing this, you did test some of this out on our class. I remember reading drafts, so obviously it's a very a top read in my book.
And you'll see, but hold up your book again, Alexis.
Oh yeah, we have our little tabbies in there too.
I mean, this book is on my desk all the time, and I'm sure those of you who read it will recognize some of the things that I mentioned in my presentation. It's amazing. And so thank you, Dr. Kukk. This is a gift.
it is.
You are too.
Well, with that introduction, I can't do anything more. So it was nice seeing you all, and I will catch you next time around. That was the nicest introduction I think I've ever received for anything ever. And it means a lot to me. And also to see all of your faces and Alexis, Alexis' mom, and Scarlett and Scarlett's mom. I like how that goes together. That you all have been a big part of who I am and what I do. And I remember, Alexis, you could have gone to any university in the country, and I had to snag you by offering you the first question to the U.S. ambassador to Egypt.
I remember.
Yes, I had the ambassador visiting, and I was like, all right, I got to grab this one. She can go anywhere. And you are going everywhere. And I love the fact that you're going everywhere with Scarlett and the Jesse Lewis Choose Love Foundation, literally making a world of difference. And I mean, seeing you all take off in even more ways it's really fulfilling for me, and to watch it grow and to help you, take those wings and fly into other areas. So I thank you to the both of you. And Scarlett, I remember that phone call. I was defending, unfortunately, the Center for Compassion, Creativity, and Innovation. A number of faculty members believe that compassion has nothing to do with education. And so I had to actually defend it. And it was called names in the faculty senate, which is on record. So for having compassion. Yes, it's quite interesting how you think in academia, the logic, rationality plays out. But it plays out in unique ways. And I think insecurities. And I think we've had a world of insecurities go on in many different ways. And I think compassion steadies the boat for every type of world and brings security in unique ways. And, we've been taught that compassion is somehow soft, is somehow even weak. And I hope by reading the book that we've kind of flipped the narrative on that. And that in order to be compassion, you have to have strength. And in order to have strength, you have to have compassion. It's a two-way street. They fuel each other. And I think, what I'd love for this to happen is, I don't know if you have questions or anything like that, but I thought I'd hit a little bit of a guy named Chuck Darwin and talk briefly about that, but then bounce into your questions, maybe bounce into your comments, bounce into some of the challenges that you all are facing, so that we can have this as a constructive dialogue and a book club. We can do both. We can chew gum and walk at the same time. But I love to, as Alexis knows, she's had me for, I don't know how many dozens of classes, but yeah, many. I think you set a record for honors classes. And the idea is that I love a conversation. And the conversation should happen. And I get more excited when someone asks me a question and I say, I don't know, and I have to look it up and then get back to you all. That's when I'm flying high, because that means someone's thinking outside the box in a way that I haven't thought about, or I haven't heard basically in over 30 years of teaching. So for me, being on a call like this is so exciting. I mean, I taught at Harvard. I've taught at the University of Tartu in Estonia. I've taught at Boston College. I've taught WestCon, I'm teaching here. I've taught all over the world, and there's nothing like people coming together over one book and coming at it from different angles. And so I'd love for us to approach that. And when I mean different angles, not just in terms of ideas that are in the book, but maybe how you've actually tried to apply things practically, right? And you've come into issues, because I think that's where ideas have actual meaning, and they should. I'm a Dead Poet Society type of guy. Words and ideas can change the world. And so no matter what anyone tells you, and I it's one of the reasons I wrote this book, because I saw, both as my counterintelligence days during the Cold War, my job was to stop Soviet spies. My home port was the port in New Orleans and down south. I worked on Wall Street. I played semi-pro baseball until my knees went out. I did so many cool things, and Alexis knows this. I know Scarlett does. I like to live out loud, and I think we all should, and in our own worlds, in our own ways. And compassion was something no one said, but when I looked, and I looked like I was 12 years old doing a lot of these things, especially in the 80s when I was a counterintelligence agent. I would literally stick a Jolly Pop lollipop in my mouth and wear a Top Gun tank top, and people thought I was like a teenager, and I was a fully licensed counterintelligence agent. And so they don't see you when you're a kid, and you get discounted in a way. So people said things in front of me thinking that I was really no one. Even if I was a kid, I was someone. And that experience as a counterintelligence agent, being young, really opened my eyes to how we treat kids and the social emotional learning, what that can mean. And so I'd like to start with Darwin, go into the real world of practicality, address some of your questions, some of your concerns, maybe some ideas that you have. Maybe you disagree with the idea that compassion and empathy are not different. I'd love to have that conversation, because science is quite clear. They are, and I think we need to iron that out even more. And I'm trying to do that with this administration, because they use empathy in ways of conflate compassion with empathy, and it's like a chalkboard and fingernails for me on the wall. It's just, the science is so clear, and we just haven't, our conversation hasn't caught up with it. So let's start with Darwin, and about survival of the fittest, right? That's what at least I was taught. Yeah, no, Scarlett, it's more like, Scarlett, instead of this, it's more like this. Yeah, right. It's not the arms up, it's the more arms around. And once we all get inoculated, we can bring those arms back around to each other. And that's the one thing I miss. This whole thing is not, as Alexis knows, I was known as the hugging professor, not the creepy hugging professor, right? The 1, 2, 3 out. Okay. There's nothing creepy going on there. I miss that. And Darwin actually noticed something, right? So we get taught the bumper sticker version of Charles Darwin. At least I did in my schooling, in biology class. And I never read Darwin. I read interpretations of Charles Darwin from science books. And it wasn't until I was putting the arguments together on this book that some of my strongest critics would bring up survival of the fittest. And I really wouldn't have a solid answer. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to read all of Charles Darwin. And I did. And I have them right above me here in the library. And when I got to the Descent of Man, I thought I read it incorrectly. So I bought another copy, a different copy, because I thought I must have some weird interpretation of what he said. And basically, what he said is that the species that will move up the evolutionary ladder the most efficiently and effectively is the species that will have the highest number of its members, and this is his word, highest number of its members as sympathetic to each other. And he made fun in chapters 2, 4, and 5 of people who believe in what Herbert Spencer said, survival of the fittest, like strongest, the most ruthless, the most self-centered. He said, that's silly. It doesn't work because you actually take down one another. So how is that species going to succeed when they're looking to take down each other? And he actually uses an example of a baboon and a little American monkey in the same cage in the zoo that he was living nearby. And that a little American monkey, he writes this clearly in The Descent of Man. So it's the opposite of how we interpret On the Origin of the Species, right? Where the survival of the fittest. And I challenge you all to actually find survival of the fittest in On the Origin of the Species, where it's supposedly credited. It doesn't appear. It was Herbert Spencer who interpreted Charles Darwin, and we follow it like sheep. We don't question anymore. And I hope we question more than we do, right? I am an E.E. Cummings kind of guy. It's not always the answer. It's better questions. And that's where schooling comes in. K through 12 need to develop more questioners, not more people who can fill in little black dots on a standardized test. And if anything is shown from January 6th, we need more people who question what they read, question what they hear, and find out for themselves what better questions are, right? And so Darwin found out when he was looking at the American monkey, he would always eat last when the caregiver in the zoo would give the food. Well, one time, and Darwin witnessed this, and he writes about it to prove his point about sympathetic. The little American monkey cowered in his corner, and as the human caregiver was giving the food, he turned his back on the big baboon. The baboon started charging the human caregiver. And the little American monkey, who was deathly afraid of that baboon, came in, and Darwin witnessed this, and intercepted that baboon to save the caregiver. He uses that example as a demonstration of what he means about sympathy. That's Charles Darwin. So please, don't believe me either. Go read it. Go see it for yourself. It's most eye-opening, and I couldn't wait. Once I read that, I couldn't wait for my next presentation because I knew a critic was going to come there, and I was so excited to have Charles Darwin as an answer to the Darwinian critique. It was so much fun. I'm not going to lie. To use Charles Darwin to show what sympathy is. And so Paul Ekman and others have actually studied what Darwin meant by sympathy because he uses it in many different books. And they basically meant three different things: altruism, generosity, and guess what that third one is? Compassion, right? That's what Darwin meant by sympathy. I would argue that sympathy means something very different. It doesn't mean compassion, but we can have a definitional topicality type of debate if you want. But I don't think that's what we're here for, but we can. Empathy, sympathy, compassion are very different things, right? And so in the real, quote unquote, real world, right? I don't know about y'all, but when I played football, my coach, when I would tackle somebody or knock somebody down, I would help them back up after the play. The whistle sounded. And he got so mad at me. He goes, "You're not supposed to help them. You're going to take them down." I said, "Sorry, coach. It's just, that's who I am. My grandmother raised me. And if I didn't do that, I'm more afraid of my grandmother than any lineman or linebacker that's out there. I'm sorry, but grandmothers rule the world. And physics is going to show that grandmothers make the world go round. And it's just a matter of time before that happens. It's my theory. We can argue it all day long, but I was more afraid of my grandmother because I didn't want to disappoint her. And that idea of in the service, the same thing, drill sergeants. "Kukk, stop smiling. Why are you always smiling?" The year that I was in, the New York Mets had just won the World Series. And yes, I'm going to get some sympathy or some disappointment here. I'm a New York Mets fan. So that was the last time we won. So I'm smiling when we win the World Series. And this idea of you got to be being too nice, being happy, smiling as a weakness or as some sort of strength. When I looked at who was succeeding over the long term, it wasn't the people who were self-interested. It wasn't the people who were ruthless. They may have won in the short term. But what I noticed, especially as a counterintelligence agent, because you had to sit back a lot and you have to just watch and listen and not move. Those people who were self-interested and ruthless, they usually took themselves down. And all you had to do is wait. But those who actually helped others and were part of a larger team, when they started falling, those others that they helped, and they didn't do this for this reason, but this was what happened. Those others came to their rescue so they didn't fall. Or when they did fall, they helped them back up. And so they sustained success for a much longer period. And when I had a chance to meet, you guys know him as M from James Bond movies. I got to have lunch with him, and we called him C. He was the chief of MI6. And as I was writing this book, I thought I wanted somebody who had a different opinion than me in counterintelligence. And there wasn't anybody higher other than a CIA director that I could think of that would have maybe a better argument against me. So I interviewed him, and he allowed me to quote him in the book. You guys read him, right? And Sir Richard Dearlove blew me out of the water when he said, you know, you're going to be disappointed because I actually agree with you. And he gave me tons of reasons why what we see in the movies. And don't get me wrong, I love Mission Impossible films and the original series. When I was a kid, I watched it. I love James Bond flicks to the chagrin of my wife. She says, you're a smart guy, and why do you like those movies? Right. And I do, but they're not reality. If you were to take out your weapon as your first choice, you would lose your weapon and your shield. We would actually take it away. And so Richard Dearlove said that you're going to get the rest of us killed. He said the best agents were the most compassionate because they were able to build bridges between others and maybe the people that you fear. And you get a better understanding. And what he said to me, you know, the agents that use torture, enhanced interrogation, he said this: they get the information they want, not the information they need. Where compassionate agents get the information you need to stop the threat. So even in the real world of counterintelligence, compassion is strength. Compassion leads to success. And we can go on in nature and in history. I would argue, you know, Soviet Union, the main threat that I fought against, that was all for itself. And where is it? It's in the dustbin of history. And Stalin is one of the most ruthless dictators, and people thought he was successful and dropped out. As soon as you become ruthless, as soon as you move, and I'm going to throw in a Star Wars here, dark side, you go into the dark side, you're done. It's a matter of time. And when you can use your social, emotional kind of toolkit to understand people before you respond, you're not only going to succeed, but you're going to help the people around you succeed, even the people who might be against you. And I've seen it over and over again. And it does start with Luca. We could go into, you know, listen to learn, understand to know, connect to capabilities, and act to solve. But it really comes down to listening. And Darwin and others were great listeners and watchers. Darwin would have been a great counterintelligence agent, right? He spent time in the field gathering information and then writing, then deciding. And I think we all need a little bit more of less reaction, more responding, more listening. So I'm going to stop there and see where we go into listening and me trying to listen to your questions or comments or concerns. And Scarlett and Alexis, as usual, I will follow your lead. Oh, Maureen, you are actually in that too. I'll always follow your lead. I'm wide open, guys. Whatever you'd like to do.
Question.
Oh,
Is
Marina's
there-
question.
Oh, I thought someone else. Isn't there a time though, you know, I was imagining the questioning and stuff of people where you do have to meet that kind of meanness. I don't know. There are some situations where I think compassion wouldn't get the job done. Would you agree with that?
You mean like life or death?
Yeah, like in a life or death. Yeah, where you had to really defend yourself.
I think compassion is always the answer.
You do.
Yes. And there's a thing in Buddhism called fierce compassion. So remember, compassion is not becoming a doormat. Compassion is taking action. So, right, that is actually part of compassion, Maureen. And I know you would love this because Maureen was a teacher and we've had discussions about words before that have gone late into the night. And compassion used to be a verb, not just a noun.
Oh,
Abraham Lincoln used it as a verb. A guy named Shakespeare used it as a verb. Quincy Adams used it as compassionating. And so this idea of compassion not being defense, part of the idea is that in overcoming a problem, the compassionate answer is to stop someone. So for example, let's just take an easy one in history here. Adolf Hitler. The compassionate response is to stop him.
Mm-hmm.
It's not to put up your hands and say, oh, he'll turn around. It's the opposite. When you listen, you understand, and you connect with what you need to do, you have to act, right? Think about, there's a great philosophical problem called the trolley car problem, right? Where on one track, there's 5 people and their back is to the train. And on another track is 1 person. And you are the only person at the switch. And in philosophy classes, they have students debate, what do you do? Do you pull the switch so it goes to the one track with the 1 person? Or you just leave it alone and let nature take its course and let it go straight on to the 5 and kill the 5? What do you do? And so what's the compassionate response? And to me, it's actually doing something to mitigate against the bad, right? And so that's where compassion has action. You're going to do something. So my youngest son and I, we just watched, he loves this show called Mindfield, Mindfield. And it's one of those YouTube, I never heard of it before. So when my children say they're watching something, I finagle my way into figuring out how I can watch it with them to see what it's about. And it was so good. And it teaches psychology, it teaches morality, ethics. I couldn't believe there was something on YouTube that was actually useful. And I was pretty shocked. And it actually, he asked me what episode, and I saw the trolley car. It's season 2, episode 1. And he goes, what is that, Dad? I said, let's watch it together. And we paused it and asked him what he would do. He goes, I don't know. It's so scary that you're deciding whether to switch the track. And so I had him answer. And we had a great discussion about that. But Maureen, it's always about compassion. Mm-hmm. Compassion to me is always an answer. Is always, let's go Mandalorian here. It is the way. Right? For those of you who have watched The Mandalorian, I think it is the way. And I think if we just took a little bit more time to understand what we think is the most compassionate response, wouldn't it be awesome, Maureen, if the world competed on who was more compassionate? Right? I took this action because I thought it was the more compassionate way. And they're like, no, the other way is more compassionate. Amen. Right? To me, those are the debates and arguments we should be having. Right? But we don't, because we put compassion. And Maureen, your question, I get to have fun with you because I love you. Right? That question itself puts compassion to the back seat. I think compassion should be in the driver's seat at all times.
Mhm.
You don't have to agree with it too, Maureen. I know you'll come back at me if you want, but I do believe compassion is always the answer.
I think it's the first go-to. Definitely.
It should be.
Yeah.
I believe it's the answer too. I mean, there have been so many different scenarios where even in life and death situations with guns, where the person intends to kill the other person, that they have thoughtfully responded. I'm using a little bit of choose love verbiage with love, compassion in action. And it has de-escalated the situation. It has cultivated trust. I just listened to Molly Hudgens, who is the teacher that's famous for, she wrote the book called Surviving Sycamore. She's famous for disarming a student that came into the school with a loaded gun through prayer. So I too believe that it is the more powerful way. I think we're wired to defend and meet fire with fire. And that's why I think to be able to thoughtfully respond with compassion or love is the stronger way every single time. I totally agree.
Well, and biologists show that we're wired for compassion, because as a species, we survive together. When we separate ourselves in the past, we didn't survive too well. And we are social creatures. And this is why the pandemic has also been a big problem, right? Just as an example, I think some of you probably have seen the experience in Las Vegas, right? They are going back to school, even though the pandemic is still surging, because suicide is going up in children. So this is that example, Maureen, of compassion, right? You're risking death on the pandemic side, but children seem to be more resilient to COVID-19.
Right.
To stop the suicides, the drastic number increase of suicides. I'm asking that we actually, when we act intelligently. And when I say intelligently, I mean compassionately, because I think that is the intelligent path. Anybody, I don't know about y'all, but anybody can get angry. That's not special. But when my son gave me the best compliment before Christmas, he asked me, Dad, he goes, I tried to get you angry because I was so mad. And he goes, instead, you started singing a song every time I said a word because it reminded you of a song. And it made me start laughing. But I was angrier because you made me start laughing. And he goes, why do you do that? I said, because at the end of the day, I actually look at myself in the mirror and I have to know that I tried my best in every single thing. We're not perfect, but I'm not going to let someone anger taint my day. Right. And so my staff here, we are actually meeting in person. 75% of our classes are in person all fall and now in the spring. And my staff has been on fire. I just found a song. And so we just ended our second week last week. I don't know if you guys know this group. I've never heard of them. I love them. They're called Sidewalk Prophets. And there's a song called Smile. And that song made me think of my staff, because every time I go in, no matter what I know personally they're going through, I see them making our students smile. And I mean, my faculty, everybody. And I sent that to them thinking, okay, they're going to think this relatively new dean is wicked corny. And I didn't care. And some of the most stern people I know came back and said, that meant so much to me. It's those simple little things, right? And I think we can make the difference if we want to. And we need more people to make the difference now in the pandemic, because a lot of us are separate. And I'm fortunate. I'm at a job where we're actually keeping social distance. We're actually having the classrooms where we're actually meeting, but most places aren't. And so we need to give more effort into doing that. And I think that's the compassionate response. And so when I hear someone say that, you know, compassion, you know, can't be done, I think their imagination needs a little help. I think you can get creative. Alexis, you know, remember how I started classes? Every single class, even it was international relations or it was brain science.
I'm not
It's
sure.
testing my memory. All I remember is the script, and that's what I'm remembering when we used to bring in songs.
Yes, I love the script, and my favorite song is Superheroes, right? And the script and other songs, right? That gets people thinking outside the box. So they've just read a bunch of readings. It's all bobbled up there. You can see my students, right? And you guys in your classrooms, right? You can see them, they're ready to go, but it's all in there. All you have to do is relax.
Yeah.
And song and music makes everyone relax, right? And so I told them, if you don't give me songs that relate to the readings, I would inflict all 1980s songs on you because I love the 1980s music. Right? And so, yes, I had it all teed up for every single class, what song I would do. But they got into it, and I learned rap. I hadn't heard 3/4 of the artists that they know. But then I listened, and they connected the readings to the songs.
Mm-hmm.
And then discussions would just flow naturally, and everyone would just laugh and smile while they're learning. Go figure that. Right? We've forgotten how to have fun in the classroom, and social emotional learning brings that back. Jesse Lewis' Choose Love movement brings that front and center, right? And that's what we have to keep doing, right? And one of the things I loved about this, and Shreya, I see you in the chat too. God, I miss you, Shreya. Yes.
Hey, Chris, Alicia has a question. Alicia, do you want to ask that question?
Yes, just thinking about, I'm a school counselor, elementary, right now 3 through 5, we're about to move in 6th grade. And I think one of the hardest things to teach right now as a counselor is, with compassion, is actually taking the action. We can talk about it. The kids can explain what compassion in action is. Our kids can explain the difference between empathy and compassion. And I'm very proud of them for that. But the thing that seems to be the hardest is for them to be brave enough to take action, and even in a difficult situation, or even in a compassionate situation where they actually could show love. It seems like they're still resistant to that. That's one of the hardest things for me to get them to do.
Yes, and I would argue that's even the case for adults. And I would argue it's more so for adults to do that, right, kids? So one of the things that I recommend you do, and this actually came up, I don't know if you remember this, Scarlett, it came up in one of the trips, one of our conferences in Hawaii, and one of the teachers had the exact same question. And one of the things that works really well, you know, the books Pigeon Drives the Bus, right? And so you can, I don't know of any kid who doesn't like that series or that book, and they all know it. And so the author, and I can't believe I'm freezing on his name. If anybody knows his name, please just type it in the chat room while I'm talking. Thank God for Google, right? We all can just jump on there and grab it. But he was on NPR, and I'll never forget this. He said, I actually drew the pigeon so that everyone could copy it. I am not going to sue anybody who uses my drawing. Mo Williams, yes, thank you, thank you. Mo Williams, you can go listen to NPR. You can use his drawing. So I asked the teacher, and we stayed there for a couple of days. So she came back and she said it worked like a charm. Draw scenarios of Pigeon Drives the Bus in a place where they would do some type of action or have choices that the students then can draw on what they would do next. And it's almost as if for young kids to draw something is almost like an action. You know how sports psychologists say if you're thinking of it and swinging the bat, your muscles actually are thinking it's swinging the bat.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was thinking that it's the same way with kids. When they start thinking of the different scenarios of that can possibly occur and solving an issue, and leave it blank. Don't give them actually options, and they'll come up with ways of solving the pigeon problem in ways that you can't come up with. But you can have discussions about that, why that pigeon took the action. And by talking about it, by drawing it, and by thinking about it, and you know, as a psychologist, when you combine all those things together, you tend to get action afterwards. It's not one route, right? It's a multitude of routes. And for some reason, drawing in kids, and I couldn't draw as a kid, but it did make a difference for me too. And that seems to really work in terms of thinking about what the pigeon would do and the pigeon doing it, and then coming up in the playground. Because that next year, a mother came up and was explaining to us about, nudge the numbat, to hug the human. And she had road rage with her daughter in the back seat. I don't know if you remember this, Scarlett. And she yelled at her mom, stop driving, pull over, nudge your numbat to hug the human. It's like, what the heck is going on? But that little girl took on her mom while driving in road rage. I don't know about you all, but I wouldn't even challenge my wife on that, right? I mean, that I know I'm making light of it, but that is also an action. I think they have to think about taking action. They have to write about doing it. They have to draw doing it. And we do that in sports all the time.
That's an awesome answer. Thank you. Mary,
Can I jump in with an example?
Sorry.
I just wanted to share an example of something that we're doing with our preschool kids. And we recite the Choose Love recipe every day. And these are 4-year-olds. And the first thing is compassion is a hard word for them to say. So in the beginning, they've called it compaction in action, which is awesome. Now, halfway through the year, they say compassion, but it was compaction in action. And we repeated it that way for them. But what we've done in the classroom is we've shown them examples of what they could do of what compassion in action would be. And one of our 4-year-olds took that to the next level, and they put it in their play. And he had another little boy pretend to get caught in a door to the playground. And he opened the door for the little boy and helped him through the door. And then he yelled, "That's compassion in action." And that's a 4-year-old that did that. And my heart grew 5 times when I heard him yelling that. So it really is great. And and it's hard sometimes, but to really see those things in the moment and say, oh, that's compassion in action, or that's forgiveness. And it works so well with these kids. So I just wanted to share that. And I guess that's how we see that the younger kids, they can grasp those things sometimes easier than like what you said with even maybe like Alicia's kids a little bit older and like adults, right? They're little sponges and they're like, oh yes, I want to do this and I see this and I get this. But I wanted to share that because it was phenomenal to see that with our little boy.
Great.
That's awesome. Thank you, Dee Dee. Chris, Mary had a question. Mary is one of our Choose Love ambassadors, and I have the same question actually. She said, if compassion is such an essential piece of life thriving, why is it so difficult for humanity to naturally demonstrate it? And I'll add to her question, we have a negative bias woven into our DNA, where we focus on the negative. We know that we're reactive. And that's why I made the comment before that I feel like we're wired to react and to defend ourselves, right? And so, but you say we're wired for compassion. It's a more natural thing. We know babies are born wired towards compassion. Yep. So why is it so difficult for why are we seeing what we're seeing in the media and around the world and these horrible atrocities? Like, why do they happen if that is not really our true nature?
Okay, so you saw me scurrying around my desk.
I thought you were running out because it was such a hard question.
Actually, it's a great question, and it's related to the first one about action again. I think this idea about it's hard to take action is something that we have to keep in the forefront, because it gets to the play of actually doing something, right? And doing something in the brain. Psychologists are really great at studies in this, and that's what this is from. This is from 15 January this year, Science Magazine, the leading science journal in the freaking universe. And it literally talks about behavioral convergence. Basically, it's a fancy way of saying how the way human behavior occurs and why does it occur. And it goes back to the neurochemicals, right? With compassion, you can get oxytocin flowing, right? Which then kicks off dopamine and serotonin. Just by thinking about that and by doing it, it actually gets you in that path primed to move and to act. And then the more you do it, the easier it is to act. And so by doing the play, though, what Dee Dee said, that's a great way to do it, right? Because it's starting to prime you and starting to prime that brain. And so I just wanted to go back, because this answer is going to go back to the neurochemicals, but it's really related back to the original question about action, about how hard it is. It's a really good question. Remember that who we are is both nature and nurture. It's not one or the other. So what does that mean? It basically, yeah, we're hardwired in certain ways, but then our environment, and that's what these articles and these studies are about how the environment that you're in affects how you act. And this gets to, remember the famous marshmallow story.
Oh yeah.
Right? That when they initially did the marshmallow story, those who could wait later in life for the marshmallow, later in life, they seemed to succeed, right? Well, that initial study had a bit of a problem. It didn't control for the environment. And so when they initially did this study, they believed that minority children had less patience than white children. But they didn't take into the fact that the minority students didn't have trust for the people that were ready to give or take the marshmallow away. Well, a grad student in 2012 in Rochester decided to control for that. And what she found was that an environment where the person who was controlling the marshmallows did 3 trustful activities before they made the deal, every single student waited, except for one. We won't talk about him. Right? There was one. In the other place where the person who was in control of the marshmallows broke 3 promises, more than half ate the original marshmallow. What I'm trying to say, it's not just how you're hardwired, it's what's around you that also matters. So in other words, again here, grandma was freaking right. Who you hang with matters, right? Your environment matters. Your learning environment matters. If you base your learning environment on punishment, you're going to get a lot less success. The Catholic nuns that I went to school with, guys, in my early period, I couldn't get latitude and longitude. These things got wrapped with a wooden ruler to where they actually went down to the bone. I was a C student. as soon as I got to the safe public school, I'm joking, right? But as soon as I got to public school, I had Mrs. Peck, who asked me how I saw the map. No one asked me that before. She tried to understand how I was approaching it. Short story is, right, you guys know, I graduated top of my class. I never had to pay a dime for my PhD. I got paid for doing it. One teacher turned my whole academic life around, and it was the environment she was in, that she created. And so every time I stepped in front of Alexis or Shreya or any of my students, I always tried to summon my inner Mrs. Peck, right? To create that environment they felt safe talking in, that we can explore ideas in any way, shape, and form. And so we're hardwired in a certain way, but our culture also has an effect, Scarlett. And so if you're around people who believe in that self-interested, me or the highway mentality, guess what? You're going to get those brutal takedown type of environment. That's why I have nothing to do. I will never say anything bad, but I'm gone. I won't play into that. Homie, don't play that game. I'm not going to play in that environment, right? That is not someplace that I think is helpful or healthy in any way, shape, or form. And I'm sure we all have stories about Thanksgiving table, extended family, which we won't get into because this is recorded, right? And Bob doesn't need to know, right? What's going on? But
That's okay. Bob's not going to watch this probably.
But it goes back, and this was studied, Scarlett. A guy named Jean-Jacques Rousseau said, right? He's very famous for this concept of the social compact, right? That if you give government power, they also should then respect what the citizens want. And so there's this give and take, right? And that's Jean-Jacques Rousseau. Well, he wrote, very similar to Darwin, that we are all born with natural compassion. I don't know about y'all, but I don't know of any baby that comes out and like kill, crush, destroy. I don't. And if you do, well, you know, maybe we should have a glass of chocolate milk together and you can talk to me about that, right? But I don't know of very many babies who come out looking to take down the world. But Jean-Jacques Rousseau says, society teaches us to lose the compassion. How? For example, on playgrounds. What do Americans play in their playgrounds, at least in the Northeast? When I left the Bronx to go out to Children of the Corn, Brookfield, Connecticut, I played stickball and stoop ball, but they played this game that no one told me about called Kill the Carrier. Or they played King of the Hill, where you push down other people. So we teach, and we can allow our kids to do those types of things. We can either set the example or not.
And that's a really good point, Chris. I mean, and that's what I've said about Adam Lanza too, that, you know, that we like to blame and we like to finger point, but, you know, really it's all of our responsibility. It's the society and the environment that we created. And that's why I had to take my part of the responsibility. We have another, can I go into another question, Chris?
Whatever you like.
Tiffany is one of our ambassadors, and she has a question. Do you have any advice to help students feel that you are showing compassion and action towards them in building relationships and or helping them in school when they have every wall built up to keep from trusting you, especially students who are new to your school and have huge walls built up due to trauma and previous disappointments in relationships? And Tiffany and Chris, I think that this is so pertinent right now from what we're hearing from educators with students that have been in lockdown in homes, that are coming back into schools, that are traumatized, that are disconnected. And so I think it also is apparent there. So what is your response to that?
Yes, I'm gonna refer, Tiffany, this is a really powerful question because I think it also gets to what a good teacher is. as well. And I'm going to go to another author called, her name is Brene Brown. I have one problem with Brene Brown's work is she confuses empathy with compassion. She hasn't caught up to the science of Dr. Tanya Singer and other neuroscientists. Other than that, I love Brene Brown's work, other than her videos on that mixing up of compassion and empathy. But her word, vulnerability, I think you, me, anyone who's in that position of responsibility, and I would argue it's a position of power, should show vulnerability. That vulnerability breeds trust. And if you can't show your own vulnerability in ways that's constructive to your students and to the people you're serving, you are never going to break down that wall of trust. They have to know something about you, that they feel that they got to know you really, not just you, but something that is a part of you, that means something to you. And for me, it's literally each class. Alexis has probably seen every little vulnerable thing of mine because she took so many of my classes. But one of the things after the first week I do is I'm a drill sergeant the first week. They'll probably tell you, I try to chase people out of my class who don't want to learn. I don't want you to waste your money. Don't stay in my class if you don't want to learn. But once you're in, you're mine. I'm your family. I will do anything to help you that's legal and ethical. But once you're by that first week of drop ad, I drop some vulnerable things about who I am so that students can feel free to come to me. And as Alexis knows, there was one instance where we had a veteran who had a full weapon come to me because his wife was in intensive care. His daughter was in intensive care for two different reasons. His wife is famous for that car off of 684 who they couldn't find for 24 hours. She was literally off the side of the road and she was dying. He was done. He was a Purple Heart veteran in Afghanistan. And he came in and I could tell when he sat down that he had 9mm. It wasn't no longer 45s. I made Alexis and the other assistant, I sent them on a wild goose chase that they couldn't come back. I gave them an assignment that they couldn't fulfill because I wasn't sure I could actually help him. The way I reached him was I explained my vulnerability at certain times. And he helped others when he was in the service. And I asked him why he couldn't help the people he supposedly loved the most. And he was willing to give up. And we got deep into that vulnerability. In order to be vulnerable, you have to be strong. Because you're opening yourself up, right? Something. But people know when you're being honest or when you're freaking faking it. If you're faking whatever you're doing, I don't think you're in the right field. But if you live it, you believe it, it is your core. Oh, I can't wait to hug you. I want that energy, right? In that vulnerability, so many of us men think it's a weakness, and we have it so screwed up in so many different ways. Vulnerability, Tiffany, that's a surefire pathway in order to build trust. And I'm looking right at you in your screen, your Brady Bunch screen here. Yeah, it's such a powerful question, but that would be one way, and to come up with ways, right, that you're vulnerable, but it doesn't give a key into taking you down, right? And so I used to come up with lists where then students could get to know me, and when they pass me on the street or something, say it, yeah, it registers, Because if you're not saying the real thing and you don't register it while you're walking by without thinking, they're going to know. So it's coming up with those things that you don't mind people knowing, but they get to know you.
Can I just respond to that? Which, thank you. That's such a powerful answer. I so strongly believe in choosing love. Like, it just started with gratitude, and then hearing Scarlett's story, I just totally embraced everything. And so as I'm having conversations with students, I feel like that's, and staff even, I feel like that's how we're moving forward in it. But I haven't been able to get to that level with students who have experienced significant traumas, because I myself have not been in their shoes. I tried to put myself in their shoes, but I haven't been in their shoes. And so I haven't been vulnerable to maybe the extent that I need to. And so I think that's awesome. I mean, I meet with the student that I'm struggling the most with tomorrow morning. So I'm going to try to get to that level and see where it goes. So thank you very much for that.
And that's one thing that I can do, having experienced a tragedy myself and talking about it. So I'm vulnerable, and that's an incredible way to connect with everyone. That's the upside of going through something like that. But what about for Tiffany, who is dealing with a student who she's never been through that? How do you connect with somebody you've never been down to the depths that they have?
Okay. So remember, for compassion, you don't have to have empathy. I just want to say that again. You don't need to have empathy to have compassion. Matter of fact, I actually think it's, for the most part, better not to have empathy, to have compassion. Because if you feel someone else's pain, it can become like quicksand.
Yeah.
And you can fall in it, right, and not see it. So, just as an example, and this is another real example, a young lady came to me, one of my students, when I was back in 2003, 2004, and she was raped. The first person she came to was me. I've never been raped, but I damn well helped her. And I listened to her without saying anything. Just listen. That by itself is powerful. But then, after listening, I asked her what she wanted me to do. I wanted to empower her again, not me. She was drained. She needed to have the power in her hands again. And I was going to be her shield. She was going to be Captain America, and I was going to be her shield. She could wield me anything, any way she wanted to. And she said, Dr. Kukk, I want to think about it. I said, that's fair enough. I'll give you an hour to think about it and come back. And she did. Short story is that we went together to a counselor first, and then to report it, to get it squared away. Once you report it, as many, I don't know if some of you know, I have no legal right to know what's going on there afterwards, right? Unless she tells me what happens. And that's what I told her. I said, I will be there for you in any way, shape, or form. But after that, she took it on herself. And I was able to help her, but I connected, right? That part of Luca is connect to capability. You just don't say, oh, here's a counselor, and go see the counselor. And, check back with me in a week. You actually walk them there. You make sure they get there. You make sure that they need to go wherever they needed to go. And Alexis knows this. I spent nights at the Women's Center with other young women. I bring up the first young lady in my very first teaching, because she came back to me after she graduated, has her own child, her own career and success. And when she found out that my wife was pregnant for the first time, she came back to campus, and I bawled like a little baby after this. She came back, stopped me on the quad and said, Dr. Kukk, I heard that you're expecting a child. I said, yes. She goes, do you know the sex? I said, nope, we're not, I don't care. As long as it has legs and arms and I don't, whatever it is, I'm jacked and jilled and the pail of water. And she goes, I hope you have a daughter. I said, why? Because you be the greatest dad for a girl. I may pretend that didn't affect me, but it did. And I had no experience in what she went through, and I'm not going to pretend that I did. And there's a great TED Talk about stepping in someone else's shoes by a disabled woman. I can post it back, or I can send it to Scarlett or Alexis. And she says, no one can walk in my shoes. They're a size 1.
Right.
And she goes, how dare you think you can walk in my shoes? You can't, but you can help. You can make certain things easier to achieve and to get by, right? And so I ask you to step back to listen, but then to connect to certain ways to help that person get through. You don't have to feel it. You know it's wrong. You know it's hard. You know they're going through hell. You can do something about it.
And just the courage to be present with them in a meaningful way is a really big deal.
Yeah, but also remember to give them power back, right? A lot of times people they either get power taken away from them, their own self-power, their self-determination, or someone just, they give it away. And it's a lot of times seeing that their own light is enough to power them forward, and they can't see it. So you have to almost help them find it, not shine it. They have to find it. And once they find it, my God, it's a night and day, and you can just see it. And when you're sitting in classes, you can see when a student is going through time. And so I will actually ask students to stay after. And I would say, oh, it's nothing. I just have something I want to talk to you about. And as everyone leaves, I'll ask. And 9 times out of 10, someone will say, yeah, Dr. Kukk, my mom is going through cancer. And that in and of itself, just someone that they can talk to. And so, you can help them out. You can get them. I'm not a counselor, but I can get them to the right places, right? And that's the key. I think we forget that none of us have all the answers, but many of us know who has the answers to what other people need.
If I could just add something sorry, I didn't even cut you off, Dr. Kukk.
Yeah, no.
Add something. Because rereading, different parts of your book and certain things now came to me differently. And one part was silence. And I feel like this is a part of it too, especially with you, Tiffany. Sometimes you kind of know what's going on, but maybe they're not willing to share yet. But the silence, speaks volumes as well. Doesn't mean like if you understand, but you still you're listening to into those silent moments as well. So I just think that's something that's really important. I feel like is lost, especially I was also thinking about social media and how it's really hard to find that silence now, and things are being drowned out just because there's so much all the time overloaded. And I think it's kind of going back to those basics, the human connection, just understanding when there's something off, that silence, and actually reading into that, I think is really powerful too. Was there any other last notes or questions?
I have a quick question. I don't know the quote from your book, but how you explained that, compassion is such a big part of our nature, nurture. We're all born with that. Why is it perceived? And you said something like this in your book as being a weakness. We're afraid to show love. We're afraid to show compassion because it's a weak thing. Why Why is it that stigma on it for some
'Cause
people?
Well, so going back to the gentleman who coined the phrase survival of the fittest, going back and understanding why that occurred, I think is really important to getting to answer your question, Pam, is that we were creating a society that was really dependent on what they called the individual, right? Going back, basically, it's our capitalist way, our capitalist system. So Spencer was looking to tie capitalism and making society make it plug in to that economic system a little bit better, if you read Spencer. And so it's based on individuality, right? And capitalism is good and capitalism is bad. It's got its, just like everything, it's got its positives and it's got its negatives. Well, Spencer wanted to plug in Darwin into making that system work a little bit more. So we perverted Darwin's idea of the survival of the fittest, right? You're supposed to be ruthless. You're supposed to be looking out for number one. You're supposed to be the toughest guy. And I'm going to pick on Scarlett here for a second because she loves this dude named Sylvester Stallone so much, right? And everything's blowing up in his movies, right? Everything. Yeah, I know. And now we lost her because now she's got Sylvester Stallone in her prefrontal cortex. So it was nice, having the conversation with you, Scarlett. I know you're somewhere else now.
Lizard.
But this idea, right, of the tough macho person, right? And to be honest with you, Pam, growing up as a teenage boy, that pissed me off so much. The girls always went for the guys who were jerks, who were in the leather jackets, who treated women like they were dirt. And I was like, wait a minute. Yeah, no, I had girls that I dated, like, after the date, like, you're so nice. Matter of fact, I'm not kidding. This really happened. You're too nice. I'm like, what? But that is actually really the case, and I couldn't understand that. But we're saying, in order to survive, in order to make it to the top, you've got to be that way. And so we've inculcated society that way, and that's why I'm willing to have a debate with anyone about the science of this all. Show me that actually works, because you don't have Darwin behind you, you don't have Jean-Jacques Rousseau behind you, you don't have, matter of fact, you have no one behind you other than your fists and what you think are really beautiful, your biceps, right? That's it, right? You don't have the brain. I'll take anybody with a brain over anybody with brawn any day, anytime. Tell me that Tom Brady at his age is still winning, right? And there are not other guys that are younger and more athletic. There are, but he's still winning because he's got a brain for football. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's what matters. Getting my men out of harm's way in the military. I was one of the smallest leaders, and there were some big dudes that were, the guys voted to be in my platoon because they knew I wouldn't leave them behind. Mm. When you determine who you want to go in a foxhole with, it's not the guy who looks out for himself.
Right. Exactly.
Right. But we build a system, a societal system, Pam, that believes that. That's why when Scarlett was asking, Scarlett knows I was working on my own social emotional learning program. I trashed it so I could do it with her. I said, yep, I'm putting aside, and I donated every single moment, every single time, everything for Scarlett and the Jessie Lewis Choose Love movement, because I believe, Pam, that the way to change it is with education. Mm-hmm. And it starts in the very ground floor. It starts at pre-K. Yeah. It starts with my sons and with other people's children asking, what is the most compassionate way? It's having debates about who's the most compassionate, not who's the most ruthless. Mm-hmm. Right? That's where it's at, and we structured our society, and it goes back to this new Science magazine work on behavioral convergence around the world, and that's why I think it's the stories we tell. Stories are powerful. System we created, right? We think that's the key part. Whenever I hear someone putting someone else down, I'm gone. Yeah, you lost me. Because if you have to put someone else down so that you feel like you can be on top, it's a matter of time before you go down. And I don't want to be around. Nope.
Very true.
Yes, Anna.
I just wanted to share with you what I used your work for. We're having a very bad case of a lot of people dying of overdoses in our community, and we have a really increase in homelessness. So just before this book club, our mayor was having presentations from different agencies on homelessness and how to address it. And my friend who writes the speaking notes for the mayor, first of all, she said, should I write speaking notes for the mayor? And I said, yes, you should. And then I used you as what she should be putting into the mayor's speaking notes to prepare those that were listening to the story. And I gave credit to you in your book, but around being compassionate listeners so that they could hear the story, so that they could actually be ready to figure it out to move forward. So I just wanted to thank you for writing the book, but I also wanted to let you know that I took you and gave you credit and passed your words on to our city council. And I'm also using your work in the work that I do, because we have a lot of people working with young people who are on a pathway towards violence, and we're trying to give them a circle of care. But now the workers are getting oppressed by the COVID. So now we're running out of resources. So now we're kind of getting anxious with each other. So your book came at the perfect time for me to be a compassionate listener, but then also to figure out how to support each other and moving forward. So I just wanted to say thank you very much. And I want to say thank you to Scarlett, because the books that you choose have changed my life. And I also want to say, and I don't know if it's just this group of people, but you guys are like so amazing. Like, I've never met you in person, but you're also genuine. I feel your hearts. And I'm so sorry I missed December because I was doing something with my kid. And then I realized the time and I was really angry. But I just wanted to share that all of you, your sincerity and your comments and the support you've given me sometimes over. I leave here feeling like I've actually got those hugs that Dr. is talking about. And I don't know if I'll ever see any of you in person. But I got to tell you, I love you.
Aw.
We love you too.
We love you too. Aw, thank you. And I chose the books because they changed my life. And Dr. Kukk definitely is among the top. I mean, we love him, and he's part of the Choose Love family. He's the reason we're here.
I'm part of the family, you know? That's the way it goes.
Once you're in, and you're in, Anna.
Anna.
You're not getting out.
Yeah, Anna, you're in now. You're in.
Don't get out.
You guys, you give me the books and then I give them as gifts. So like, I read them, and then a whole bunch of people in my life now get them. So doctor, your book's gonna be sold, but some of them I have a hard time finding some of them in Canada. I had to go on Amazon for some of them, but your book I could get. Your book I could get.
Where are you?
I'm in Sudbury, Ontario, Canada. It's in Northern Ontario. So I have to order online, but I can't go to the States because now with COVID, I'll never get anything. So every time I see poor Scarlett order here, I go, the book club will be over by the time I get it. Yeah, so it's just phenomenal. Just absolutely. My life has been changed by all of you. Seriously.
Well, you just made all of our nights. I can tell you, you made my whole week. So with that, and yeah, man, just listening to you, yeah, I felt the love, and it is. I mean, that's the beauty about, I think, this group and the group of people who are trying to make a difference. And I know Shannon, I've worked with Shannon before, and you hit it, Anna. I think once you're experienced once with these guys, you fall in love. It's that simple, right? And my wife she heard this, she'd be really mad, especially if she looked at the screen. Right. But it's so true. And it's because it's real people trying to make a difference. And like Tiffany's question resonates with me so much, because it's some of the hardest things to achieve is to help somebody and have them trust you enough that you can help them, but also not fall into the empathetic quicksand, because it can be. And many of us are empaths, right? We tend to feel, I know Maureen does. I've walked down a New York City street with her, and every single person, no joke here, this really happens with Maureen.
Really?
Everyone who seems down and out comes to her.
Oh.
Really, I'm not joking here. It's amazing. Bob said, pointed this out. He goes, watch. So I don't know if you noticed, Maureen, that Bob and I walked behind you. Yes, I was watching you because I don't want anything to happen to you. But also, he's like pointing, and sure enough, every single person who seemed to be down and out goes to Maureen. And
Yeah.
I think that's all of you. But you also have to be careful, and Anna, you hit on it, not to burn out. Because when you are like that, it's easier for you to burn out. And you're not going to help anybody, not yourself. And that's why I believe in compassion, not necessarily empathy. I think empathy can help. Don't get me wrong here. I think it can help, but it's like fire. It can warm you up on a cold Connecticut night, but here in Virginia, there's not so much cold. I'm just going to rub that in a little bit. And to Scarlett, because I want Scarlett down here.
Work on her.
But just like fire, if it's in the fireplace, if it gets on your carpet, it can burn your house down. So, and that's the way I see empathy. It can give you, it can give you that understanding, but if it's too much and it takes you to a place that is hard for you, you're going to be hurt, and then you're not going to be able to help anybody. And that's what I get worried about. And that's why, a lot of hospitals have me talking to nurses and assign my book for hospital administration and nursing. And now the FBI is using it. The Resilience chapter you guys read, they're using that for hostage negotiation teams now at Quantico because of burnout. And it really, it's something I worry about with all of you, because as Anna says, you can see it with you guys, you can feel it. And if I can help Scarlett in any way, or come back and do something else, or if there's a chapter or something that anyone wants, I'd be happy to do it. You know it, Scarlett. I'll do anything that's legal and ethical for you. And I think you know that, Scarlett. So, and Maureen, that goes for you.
I think that you don't have to necessarily worry about the Choose Lovers, because we understand compassion in action. We understand the scientific benefits when you do for others and how much you get back. And that's because of you in the program. And I tell educators this as well, to set the intention for them every time I speak to them, that literally all of the nurturing, healing love that you give out, you get back, you get strengthened when you give. Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah. And so I think that's part of what we teach, and that's part of what we practice too, maintaining that awareness. I want to give a shout out to Brooklyn Rainey. She's on our call tonight. She's another one of our authors. She wrote One Trusted Adult, which is a fantastic book, which we're going to be reading within the next couple of months. We did a podcast, and she's a fantastic person, excellent speaker. It's going to be,
I don't know, I'm thinking of retitling it One Compassionate Adult now after this talk. And Chris, the perfect example, perfect lead into our conversation next time, when you talked about your teacher who saw something in you and capitalized on that and made the most of the moments with you. And you teed us up perfectly. And this was phenomenal tonight. And I have started your book and I haven't finished, but tonight gives me a lot of reason to. So thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm Canadian, Anna, Ontario, Kitchener, Ontario. So we got to connect. Bunch of Canadians on this one. I like it.
And I have my aunt and uncle live in Toronto. Yep.
There it is.
Awesome.
Thanks, Scarlett.
Thank you guys. And our next book we're reading is Channel Kindness, where actually we have a chapter in that book. So please join us next month with Cynthia Germanata. And then after that, we'll be reading Brooklyn Rainey's book. I'm so excited for that. So I hope everyone can join us again next month. And we'll send a recording out of this great talk as well.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Chris Kukk, compassionate achiever. He
you,
models
everyone.
what he says. He models, he is a compassionate achiever. Thank you.
Wait,
We
quick,
love you.
Oh, wait, quick picture. Hold on. Picture time.
Okay.
Hold on. Yeah, hold on.
Oh, that's right.
Wait, I'm going to do a screenshot. Hold on.
This is trying to do.
Here, we'll try and do it all at the same time. Okay. Thank you, guys. I think I got it. Thank you.
Thank you.